Hello,
We've
everybody.
arrived, Milena.
We have arrived. Oh, okay. So I'm really excited. So last week we finished up our type series. We went over each of the types, right?
Yeah,
Um, Feeling pretty good about that. How does that feel for you? That we did it. We covered all the types,
I thought it was pretty good, and I thought we went through all the things that would be need to be known. Anyone could listen to those, and they would be taking a class.
right?
Just
So
saying. Yeah.
yeah. So I like to think of our stream, I told Danny, this as like a live recreation of a human design textbook or handbook, if you would call it.
Exactly. I would call it exactly that. A little bit of a long version as it relates to you gotta go through them. However, chock full of nuts.
Exactly. So, uh, in my mind, the most logical step after we've covered all the types is to now go into the authorities. So, for those of you joining us that can't remember what on earth authority means, authority is basically how you are designed to best make your decisions and how you receive intuitive hits. Danny, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. This whole thing with authority, this is that reliable place inside of us, right? That even if you're a generator and your authority isn't your sacral, just it's that reliable place inside of you by which you get to make the final decision on everything, the tiny things, the medium things, the big things. So what is that? That's how you navigate through your life, period. So how you fall into disarray and everything sucks, or how you do just great and things just seem to chug along one way or another, right?
Exactly. So we are going to start classes in session, folks, for our lovely slides. I don't want to sound like
That's very polite. It's Moana's lovely slide. The lovely Moana.
thank
What's her
you.
name? Vanna got nothing on you, honey.
Well, then, so we're going to start off our lesson today with this lovely pie graph that I thought did a much better job than bar graphs or
Oh yeah,
line
look at
graphs
that.
do,
That's
right?
adorable. Yeah,
Isn't it? And it's our brand colors. For anyone who has an aesthetic eye and notices what our brand colors are, yes, I
I
did
didn't
make
even
sure.
notice that. Look at that.
These and then there's some extra colors because our brand colors isn't that many of them.
Right.
So for all of you looking at the spider going, what am I looking at? So this pretend this pie graph represents all of humanity, the whole however billion people we have on the planet, and this is how they're divvied up according to their authority type. So if you can look here, emotional authority is about 50.3%, 51 some people say. So that
Yep.
is over half the planet.
Or half the planet.
Yeah.
I like to call it half. I love this thing about the solar plex. We won't go into it yet. I won't shortcut your thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I do that every week. So somehow or other, I manage to hop into your slides and not realize that's what I'm doing. So that's funny. No, this emotional authority, there's something bigger with this as it relates to just the authority of the solar plex center. It's the fact that it's 50-50. I mean, plus or minus a few tenths of a percent, it's 50-50. And so I always like pointing out that the forces want us to figure this thing out. And it's fitting. Solar plex is waking up in our lifetimes.
Mhm.
I mean, that's pretty rare that you are alive at a time that something like this is taking place. And so,
So
the,
for those who are like, what on earth is Danny talking about?
oh,
Now,
so I
so
can't
when
do a
you
show on my own. I need a translator.
you're just like woo, in the jargon land. So for those of you who have looked at your body graphs, you'll notice that it looks yeah, see, 5-year-old. Exactly.
Yep.
So when you've looked at your body graph, you'll notice that there's those shapes, right? So those shapes are your energy centers, and that part of your chart comes from the yogic / Vedic traditions from India, where you look at all your chakras. You've probably seen them at yoga studios or at your local witchy shops. Remember a person sitting and you have the rainbow of colors going down the middle, and they call it your chakras. It's the same thing, but however, Dave, oh man, we're totally ruining our like future episodes, but whatever. When did the solar plexus become a thing? Like what year? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, there is no year. It became a thing. It came,
I believe there is a year. It's a year, then it's 17 something.
well, 1781 is when it truly came online for us, and so we spent 100 years not noticing that we can't tell what it is, not noticing.
Okay, sure.
Yes.
So let's just call that the ballpark point where
Well, there's another ballpark point just
there's
because we're
another.
here. And it's somewhere between the death of Buddha and the birth of Jesus
Mhm.
is when when this solar plex center became available.
It became a thing,
Available to
right?
become online. And then when we
Because
turned into
yeah,
these nine-centered beings, it came online.
exactly. So in the yogic, chakra system, there's only 7, but in human design, you notice that's 9.
Right.
So there's
Right.
2 centers that split off,
Yes.
and the solar plexus center, which is still in the yoga tradition, split off into solar plexus and your heart. No, not your heart. Your spleen.
Hmm.
So
Well, yeah, pull back the picture of the body graph. Did you
oh
have,
geez.
let's look at that.
I was not planning it this way. Hold on. I'm ruining my slides. It's fine. It's
Oh,
fine.
sister, I'm sorry. Is this okay? We're not.
Uh, no. Yeah, we can hop back and forth. There's no hard and fast rules. How our classes
I
go.
agree. I agree. The way the splitting really took place is the number 4 and 5 were together. All that talk about the
Okay.
ego, you know what I mean? The ego. There's too much
So your
ego.
heart. So when
Yes.
you look at the rainbow chakra system, right?
Yep.
The green one, which was always referred to as your heart, is the one that you're seeing here. It's split into
Whenever we
4 and
spoke
5.
about the heart, did it not? Whenever we spoke about the heart center, the heart chakra in the old 7 center system, did we not talk about both our love of ourself, the heart for ourself, and our heart out in the world? Like a kid's got heart, that's the ego. So one is the ego's ability to do, and the other is the love of the self in the life.
Mhm.
Um, and the direction. So these two things split off because the identity of humanity, this love and direction of humanity, no longer needed to be one with the ego. The ego could stand alone finally.
So then, what we were talking about before we got to the slide, Danny's bright idea to use a visual reference,
Yes,
which
yes,
I
yes.
did
And
make.
then 3 split into what 3, which was just the spleen. I
Yeah.
don't know what
So
chakra
1
it is.
and 3.
That's that.
Yeah,
Pull the
it's a solar plexus. It's literally the solar plexus. The same thing. It's the, if I know my rainbow order, it was root and then solar plexus. It was the orange one.
Wow. So they didn't have one for spleen directly.
No.
So then that split apart. The split apart. That was always spleen. What they called solar plex is something had to act as the spleen because we've had that the whole time. That's kept
Right.
us alive this whole time. The
Right.
spleen keeps us alive,
So
literally.
now that you know the visual representation of what that rambling tangent was about, now we can go back to this and explain what this was about. So like Danny mentioned, we have a 50-ish split,
Yep.
which means that about half or a smidge over half of the population of the world has emotional authority, meaning they have their solar plexus defined. So we'll explain what that means in a second. And then the next biggest on the pie chart you will see is your sacrals. And Danny can tell you there's only one type that could ever be a sacral authority, which is your generators, both pure and manifesting.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we're moving in the pecking order as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice the pecking order is really easy when you look at it this way because the biggest hunk, if that's defined, that's the authority, no matter what else is defined, right?
Oh,
And then
you're ruining the slide again.
Oh,
So we're going to go to that in the next slide. But here we're just showing the visual representation of the breakdown of, okay, most people have emotional, then the next most is sacral, then
yep.
the next most is splenic, and splenic can come in how many varieties? So
All of
manifestors
them.
can be
Oh,
splenic,
and they can come in
projectors.
manifestors and projectors, and that's it.
That's it. Oh, okay. Only manifestors and projectors can be splenic. And then if you look here, it's just kind of hard to see. Your ego/heart is that tiny little maroony sliver.
Yep.
Here, can I highlight that? How does that work? Yeah, there you go. Ta-da! So it's only like 1%.
Yep.
And only manifestors can be this authority.
Right. Right.
No
Think
other
about it.
variety.
If you're a manifestor and that you have that channel of money, 2145, this materialistic leadership of the tribe. If that can only be the authority if there is literally no other definition below the throat. There could be, think about it. So there's a definition that defines the root and the solar plex, now solar plex authority, root and the sacral. Well, you're a generator now, you're not a manifestor. Root and the throat center. Root can't go to the throat center, and then so any definition that defines the G center, now the G center technically becomes ego, identity projected, so anyways, it
Thing.
gets a
So
little
that's
complicated.
what this blue one is. Mental projectors. You can only no, sorry, I'm lying. I'm talking about the yellow one.
Yep.
Self-projected, right? So self-projected, it's your G center. And only projectors can be self-projected.
Yep.
And
That's
then
it.
you have your mental projectors, which is
Well, no,
the
no,
nice
no,
blue one.
no, no. Manifestors can be self-projected. They could have,
Really?
yes, they could have the ego defined through 51,
Mm.
25 to the
Mm.
G center, and then the G center to the throat.
So
That,
when you look up their authority, when you're looking at a chart, they could be self-projected.
with a defined ego.
Okay. I've never seen that chart. It sounds
No,
super
no,
rare.
wait, that's right. It's wicked. These things are going to be very, very, very rare. Listen, ego, self-projected is just, it's amazing. We'll deal with it. Ego, self-projected, totally manifestory, and you can call out the ego and the identity. It'd be
Okay.
easy to describe that to the person. They would resonate quickly.
Sure. And then your last one is our special reflectors. So last week's episode was reflectors, and reflectors don't have an authority.
I don't
Slash
think they're
blue.
3% at this point yet. Are they? We'd have to check the numbers again. Last I knew they were hovering at right just a hair over 1%.
Maybe. Yeah. I think it's 3 once you put all the other ones in, right? This is not type. This is looking at just authorities alone.
Oh, gotcha. So yeah, so I mean, we're down to the end here, and as you're seeing, they get complicated down at the bottom, at the very lower.
No, that's not true. The top was very complicated. So today's episode, we are going to be looking in detail the two biggies, right? Your emotional authority and your sacral. So as we chug along in our authority series, we're going to go over all the other types. So splenic, ego, self-projected, mental. We are not going to go over lunar because we covered a lot of that in last week's episode. So if you're a reflector, go check out that episode and it's in there. So now we can explain this pecking order thing. So when you're looking at your body graph, your authority comes from what centers you have defined. So what that means is if you have your solar plexus defined, it doesn't matter what other stuff you have in your chart. This is like numero uno. So this is automatically you are now in emotional authority. Now let's say you don't have this defined, and instead you have your sacral defined. Then bam,
without number one.
Without number one. That's why I'm like not looking at number one. Then you become sacral. But exception to this is, again, not everybody is a generator. If you don't have your sacral defined and you have your spleen, then that in turn becomes your number 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's why it's number 3 on the chart. So, and if you look at it, it goes right across. What I was about to say on the pie chart, I'll just say here. If number 1 isn't present, no matter what else is, if number 1 isn't present and number 2 is, 2, because everything defaults to 2, no matter what else. If number two isn't present and there's no, so it's not a generator, and number one and two aren't present, then number three, it defaults to three. And that's why it keeps getting smaller in percentage, because we run out the mass of people. And so I was just thinking we should contact Tressa, invite her on for next week's show, because she's got a spot in her
Oh
authority.
yeah, the
Yep.
splenic. Okay, we'll sweet talk her. It'll be. I've always wanted to meet her in person. I'm always fangirling over her stuff. I'm like,
Yeah, too bad we couldn't get Savannah as well. I would love to, because Savannah is she's a projector splenic, and Tressa is a
oh, we
they
got
don't
two
have an ego, so
flavors.
they'd get along just fine and stuff. It'd be
Oh, that's cool. Okay, you talk to your people. Maybe we can get them to agree. That'd be pretty cool. But anywho, so back to our numbers. Now, number 4 was our G center. So if you have your G center defined, even if you have your ego defined, you're still going to be a G center authority. Is that correct?
Yep. It's some people would argue that point. It gets to be a nuance, because whenever the ego and the identity are defined, and somewhere in there is your authority, we call them both out to describe it,
Okay.
regardless. So they might as well be called 4 and 4. They both numbered the number 4.
Yeah, I think just for the sake of making it
Yep.
make sense and not confusing everyone, including myself. Or like, yeah, this comes after. And then lastly, these are our special projector friends.
Yeah.
Who, if they have none of these other 5 defined and they have this center defined, they become mental projectors. They are indeed very, very rare in the projector land. Our guest from our manifestor episode, her baby is a mental projector.
Oh.
Yeah. So I can say kind of sort of know a mental projector, even though I have not met him personally.
Yeah, I can't wait to be talking on that one. That one will be interesting.
Yeah, so that's a future episode. But yeah, today we're dealing with number 1 and number 2.
Yes.
But for the sake of keeping things, I guess, digestible and easy, Danny suggested we start with our simpler authority.
I suggest we start with the second most common authority as the first one we describe, just to keep it simpler, because we'll mention the solar plex plenty of times during this, I would assume.
Cool.
So yeah, we should start with the sacral.
Okay, so here we go.
You've got a sacral slide, don't you?
I have several slides for both. You have no idea.
Stop you.
This took me several days to get this deck ready. It's fine. It's beautiful. Everyone gets to enjoy all of my madness in these slides. So, Danny, you are our sacral guest. Why don't you go over what you see here?
If you have a sacral inner authority, because it's defined, this top statement becomes amongst the truest things in your natural existence. Truth comes from the sacral center, comes as a response. Leading questions, absolutely. I love this thing. So the sacral center is always there, buzzing with its energy. It's not ready to fall asleep until it runs out of energy. That's why sacral beings have a hard time falling asleep if they're not ready. And when they're trying to get to this truth, what do they want to do? This leading question is good, and this question can be teased out into hundreds of various questions, as long as they're formatted in a yes/no type format. Some kind of affirmative or negatory, whatever.
We have slides for that too.
Oh, geez. Yep. So just, do I want this? Just a nice, just general statement. Do I want? Do I like? Is it that? And then this decision time frame. This is gorgeous, because it's part of what is the reason we sacral people lose track of it, because it's too fast. It's immediate, and that's how you come to know it. You know it in its immediacy. Everything else is not that. And I'm sure that's on a slide too. So
so now we get into some more nitty-gritty things. So Danny, you can take it away.
More on the sacral authority. I would just start at the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Gut instinct. This guides desire, and it's this gut response. It feels like an energetic push, like an electric motor just came on to move you. So it's a movement push gut feeling, and it is, you can call it gut all day long. And
And like you mentioned, absolutes.
like the spleen, it operates in absolutes. It it does require specific options for decision making and this clarity process. However, those options don't need to be labeled and they don't need to be limited. So it can include infinity. It's just that the sacral will know which to pluck out of infinity, worth of choices. So, um, because it sounds like it could narrow. It's like, oh, only in these specific options could the sacral work. No, sacral will work at all times, is the thing. But it does fall within its specific decision-making clarity process. Precise questions to elicit these gut responses. This is a big deal. I keep trying to teach generators how to talk to each other, and for some reason it's hard. I wish we
So,
get a couple
so
generators on here to
yes.
teach them.
So one of the good examples I like to think about, and I use my child and my husband as an example, both pure and manifesting generator. Food. I tell them the option. I don't look at them and give them an open ended question like, "What do you feel like eating?" Instead, I'm like, "Do you want pizza? Do you want sushi?" And they'll lean towards the thing that they're wanting, like
Right.
almost immediately. That's what that precise question thing is. Like,
Has that been happening for you, Moana? That's for real? That happens in your home now.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I've changed the way I communicate with them. Absolutely.
Can we talk about that for one quick second? I
Of
know we're in the middle of
course.
slides, but this is just so gorgeous because all I ever really care about is watching it show up in real life. I love
Hmm.
this show. I love teaching all this stuff, but please show me the real life stuff because that's what we're
Hmm.
after. So what
Hmm.
you're telling me is that in your home, that which is a problem for many, many homes, mealtime has turned into the ability to communicate with the truth of the beings and suddenly have and as soon as you didn't care that you're not in charge of what they eat, because you're supposed to be the parent or any of these things,
Hmm.
as soon as you stop caring, suddenly you had peace.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, there's still like I'm getting to choose the options I'm presenting,
All right, of
right?
course.
Instead of like kind of hot dog versus pizza.
Right.
I mean, I did say pizza and sushi. I should have changed that to like maybe shawarma wrap and sushi.
But you choose the options. Yeah, you choose the options. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm sure. And they'll tell you if it's none of them. It means they're not hungry
Oh,
most of the
believe me, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Like my son will be like, can I have a different thing? And he wants me to present a different option from the options
Good
I present.
generator. You've trained him to do that?
He does it, yeah.
He does it naturally. See, there's his truth coming out. So what Moana's pointing out is she's witnessing the nature of her generator child is absolute. It's absolute. It just is. It shows up every day, all day long. That's beautiful. I love that.
Hmm.
Moana, 7
Yes.
years from now, as he turns 7, this
Hmm.
is so ingrained in him. By the time he's 14, he won't accept people telling him what to do. He'll be like, "Well, where's
Perfect.
my options? You know what? I'm inventing my own options. One of them is I don't like it." It's like, yeah, He'll allow to come out.
Oh yeah, there you go. You went into the next bullet point.
Oh, sacral center immediately responds with I've been trying to figure out how to spell these. AHHUH or
Uh-uh.
use. Yes, A's and U's. Okay. Yeah, no commitment, and there's technically one in the middle, which is I don't know, but that's
Yeah.
just because individual circuitry demands we honor a mood that we can't tell what it is until we're asked. So
Hmm.
if it's sometimes it's just I don't know, you can't tell, which really means you're not ready yet, whatever.
Hmm.
But it isn't necessarily quite final. Um,
Hmm.
so this thing comes out immediately. It comes out immediately with it moves at the speed of electricity, chemical
And it's in the
electricity.
now. It's in the now.
Right.
You can't be like in the future I'll give you an option and you'll tell me what the thing is. It's like, what? What do you mean in the future?
Right. It's not only in the now, but it's so quickly in the now that responsive, energetic thrust of yes or no, just affirmative, negative. Um, it's immediate. It's immediate. And I like to point out we're electrical beings, right? Current going through our body, all that good stuff. Well, how fast does electricity move through the body? At about the speed a battery turns on a flashlight.
Oh
right?
wow.
Chemical electricity, chemistry creating an electrical charge. That's fast, it's immediate to us, and that's how fast the sacral goes. So how fast your flashlight gets turned on, or the lights on your car, because they're battery operated, is the speed at which sacral works.
Very cool.
Yep.
So I mean, you could, I can go over this one. So, uh, when you get an affirmative or a yes response, then your sacral turns on to give you that energy to do the thing or to
Right.
give to a person, whatever.
Right. To be the thing, whatever, to sit still, to keep thinking, whatever it is, you now have the energy and you're happy. So the symptom of it, the thing that helps you recognize that you've just honored your sacral is you're happy about it. Do, 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 do. And it's self-absorbed happy. It's not one else's yet. And then
Mm-hmm.
and so that's the thing. And then the thing that makes it show up, well, what it is you're happy about is you're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, witness, oh my God, I'm doing this. I said I wanted to do that. I had this energy to do it. I'm doing it. I'm happy about it. That was the right decision. That was the right thing.
So, I
So,
mean, the trick to that is you have to start trusting that your quick as reflex, spontaneous decisions is correct.
yep.
And not
That's it.
not tell
Right.
yourself otherwise, right? So, and here's the other thing. So this is something, Danny, you can agree or disagree. Your answers might change. So if I, again, let's go back to the food example because it works. Like today, I gave the option of shawarma versus sushi. He might choose sushi. Tomorrow, it might be shawarma.
Hmm.
It has to be. So a good thing to think about is if you ask a sacral a thing about a future thing, that answer might change by the time you got up to the future thing.
Totally. And in fact, it very likely will. It very likely will
like
change.
like a party. Like in
Little,
the moment, they'd be like, "Yeah, I'll go to the party." The night before, you still want to go to the party? Yeah, I don't know
eh,
anymore.
well, maybe check with me tomorrow. And on the night of the party, it's yes or no.
Yep. So
It's
that is so it works in absolutes, but it's also changeable. Up until the point of the thing. That's why it's very much like an immediate thing. All
yeah.
right. So this is the beautiful 6-step decision making guide to
Oh,
sacral
Moana, you
authority.
do the reading. You do the reading. I want to hear what this sounds like.
Okay, sure. So, step one, you tune into your gut feeling when a decision is put in front of you. So, Danny, you have anything to add?
Yes. Adding to that, tune into your gut sacral feeling right below your navel at all times during every moment of every day, whether you're aware of a decision to be made or not, because you'll be making moment to moment decisions almost with every step.
Oh, okay.
I
There
mean,
you go.
yeah,
The nice nuance.
eventually. Yep.
Okay. Step two. So, your initial body's reaction is your truth. Okay. So, you'll either feel like almost like a going towards the thing, right? Like excitement or desire.
Yep.
Or it could, be retracting away, which is most likely, I
Right.
don't want to do that.
Right. Your body will show you, by the way, the sacral is the very basis of the thing that they tuned into long before we knew about human design, where they were doing muscle motor testing to get to the truth. You hold your arm out. If it gets weak, that's not true. If sacral is tuned into this gravitational center and this magnetic center of this planet. Sacral appears to be tuned into the vibration of the universe. I don't have a measurement for to what degree, but I believe in ourselves as these incredible things, and I'm pretty sure we're almost godlike, in our innocence. In our innocence, get out of that innocence, you lose it, of course. But
Of
yep,
course. So, our step three is when or if you have the clear answer, don't waver. Be like, yeah, this is
Shazam.
my decision.
Yep.
I'm going with it. Like, do not backpedal and start pondering and questioning
And
the.
if you're in your experiment, we read for you, you've been read, you're watching it happen. So now you're in that experiment. Consider the first year or two, you're just always in this experiment. Um, and you're watching it at all. You are to, when you do go against it, and question it and start thinking. You're supposed to watch that as well. When you get into the experiment, at that point, when you still question it or doubt it and do all the things that the not self mind makes us do, at that point, that's just as okay, as long as you're watching, because you need to see the difference. Not self mind, everything that makes you think and ponder comes in a split second later, a skip of a record later. It's only the length of time it takes for a record to have a skip. You know, it takes a tenth, a third of a second. A second would be a long time, you know, but it's not immediate. And if you've ever listened to a record player and there's a skip on your record, you hear it even though the skip only lasted, 0.018 seconds in time. But you still heard the skip loud and clear. It happened right in the middle of your favorite thing or whatever.
Right.
So you're the whole
Which
thing about
takes
that
us to
nowness and that
step
no and
4.
that yes of 3 and 4 is to recognize the immediacy of it. And then that skip of a record later, you start thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple.
Right. So, like he said, we're going into 4. If somehow you don't get an answer, it's not a yes, it's not a no, just consider that a no for right now. Like we said, in the moment, you don't have an answer, but later when you check in, you will.
It sounds like this. I don't know. Can I hit you back? All of that. All of that sounds like everything I just did there.
There you go. And then our step 5 is if you're getting like a icky feeling in your gut, it could also be fear, right? It could also be being scared. So when you're feeling that, let your body feel it. Don't pressure yourself to again make a decision, and ask yourself another hour from now, another 2 hours, or another day from now.
Yeah,
And once the fear has passed.
allow yourself the input and see how it is. To intentionally ask yourself invites the not self mind to interfere. Asking yourself is hard to do, even after you've been at it for a long time. Although you can sort of start asking yourself, you'll see. But enter back into where the energy is that you were responding to in the first place, whether it's a phone call or a thought, or you go back to a instruction you had to read that you didn't feel like doing, and you go back to it, read it again. Maybe not. You know what I mean? You're putting something together and you stopped. It's like, I don't want to do it. You're pissed. You need to go get something. You don't feel like it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Watch. These are the moments
Right.
to watch that immediacy. Yes. So wait.
Perfect.
And fear. Absolutely. Someone says something and suddenly you're afraid of a consequence. That's your mind. It's your mind in telling you a consequence of a thing. But the gut told you the truth right away. But the fear can be so loud that you lose track of what gut said. You just couldn't tell. It drowned it out. It was just too much noise on the line. Couldn't make it out. Trying to
Yeah.
hear what someone's saying in a roaring crowd and they're 10 feet away. You see them trying to talk, but no, you can't tell.
Mm-hmm. And then leads us to number 6. You just ask yourself, do I want this? Like we showed before. And it will always be your compass of things that are meant for you. If you're sacral and you just follow this handy dandy 6-step
Yeah,
process.
absolutely. And make it nuanced, follow it deeply as it relates to like pulling it apart and adding words and adding nuance to all of this for yourself. Because as soon as I read this number 6, do I want this or not? You basically go right back to number 1 and what we were saying at the beginning. Um, have I noticed this beautiful outcome that is I'm happy, I like
Mm-hmm.
it, or I'm absorbed, or I can't seem to resist it, or I'm doing it. And then the second thing is you notice that you are doing it. Whatever the thing is, you're physically doing the thing with your hands, with your mind, at a keyboard, in motion, driving, whatever the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
bracing for impact, whatever it is that you're doing it, and you're like, oh, you're okay with it. You're cleaning up. You started doing the dishes. You didn't feel like doing the dishes, but you started. Now you're doing them. This is sacral. Sacral is saying, I don't mind doing the things. Sacral likes to work. It's got to be happy, and you have to witness that your energy is at near 100% for the thing you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
at or
So
near 100%.
one of the things Danny mentioned, right, is the fear and going into the mind and the not self. So a lot of that comes from conditioning, right? Things that are not truly you. So Being a sacral authority, there are some examples that I've listed out for you for what are the primary conditioning that you would have to witness and hopefully start deconditioning out of you. So, Danny, would you like to take a look at these?
Yeah, absolutely. This conditioning. So this sacral authority is conditioned heavily because what do our parents do when we're little? Starts at the home. They stop asking us questions by the time once we start talking. They slow down on their question asking, so we then don't have as much ability to respond, and we're now trying to initiate to get our parents to engage or whatever the situation is, whatever the dynamic is.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, can I go look at this? Will you look at that? Hey, dude, I did this thing, and the parents stop. They just don't ask as much. They don't know. It
So
only needs
that's the starting point. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it only needs to be a little bit. Mom and dad only need to take 10% of the questions they would ask and start turning them into statements they make. If they're not aware that even that 10% is a reduction and the kid's like, what's going on? My life force is going away, not coming harder, you know, they'll notice. So thinking you have to take a long time to decide on things. If you're an emotional authority, that may totally be true. If you're a sacral inner authority, you really don't. However,
Mm-hmm.
the sacral will always work in a matter of degree. Hey, yeah, let's take the next step. Well, if we do the whole thing that is listed here, that's a big deal, and we're going to be into a big thing. It's like, well, I'll drive the first mile. I'll see if I want to drive the second mile. So there's sacral, yes, to move, and then sacral's always got a reservation. I reserve the right to change my mind. But you
Yeah.
just said yes. Not no more.
Right. But this particular bullet point is saying, like, when you spontaneously make a decision, people almost say, don't you need more time? How can you make that decision so fast?
Oh,
Right. And
right.
then you start second guessing. That's
Yes.
this first bullet point. It's like the conditioning of thinking that your initial gut response is wrong or it shouldn't be
Right.
trusted because
Leads to
taking
lack of
time,
confidence. Yeah.
right? And it leads to you not believing in your sacral responses anymore, right? It's like, is that the right decision? Was that a good idea? And then you go into scenario
Confusion.
spinning,
Yeah.
not self-mind
Yeah.
chatter,
Yeah.
right?
That's how
And
you
then
can
there's
know you're out of your responsive nature as soon as you're confused, as soon as there's stuff going on, as soon as indecision is truly just all over the place. Run with it. There's nothing you can do. You're stuck in it for a moment or for an hour, day, whatever. But just recognize sacral has been usurped. Sacral has been noised out, canceled out, and you got to get back in touch with it. Lack of confidence in that sacral is what we're referring to.
right. And we kind of touched upon the fear thing, right?
Yep.
Fear and anxiety go hand in hand. And like, what is
Yep.
that? What is that really, right? It's you scenario spinning about the future. It's like, well, if I do this, then this might happen and that might happen. And like, what if I don't? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And then that anxiety starts up, which is not
Oh, I
ideal.
clicked my camera. Hang on.
Oh, okay. I'm like, where'd Danny go? Danny's still here. So that's something that's very, very common as well. Is I was like, if I made a decision so quickly, what if it's the wrong one, and the things don't turn out the way that works for everybody.
If you're a generator with a sacral inner authority, get used to play with it. I don't want to scare people away, but I mean, I have moments I've had in my experiment. I had moments of fear, abject fear. It's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I couldn't stop doing the thing I was doing. And I'm like, I clearly can't stop doing the thing I'm doing. I don't want to stop doing the thing I'm doing. And then, but the fear would come in sometimes. What the hell, this isn't making me money or whatever, right? All the things. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, the whole point is to have like real life experiences, right? This is why we bring on guests when it's appropriate for the episode, because then you can see like a living breathing example, which is why Danny is so perfect for our sacral authority section of today, because he's lived it his whole life.
Start asking me questions, yes or no questions. You'll watch me go, and we'll watch where I struggle, because everyone, if you're conditioned, you struggle sooner or later. Yeah.
Right. And this is interesting. You kind of touched on this, is you're expected to be reliable and say and do the same thing day in, day out, day in, day out. And if you don't do that, you are,
Might get in trouble.
considered flaky. You're
Yep.
unreliable, right? And you're going again because, again, Danny said you should have 100% permission to change your mind. It was a yes now, it might not be a yes later. But again, you fearing, oh my God, they want me to say a certain response over and over again, you start shutting your sacral down.
Jobs do that. A job is a great place to notice that. Some people take the average job, and some people generators, they'll find ways to get into their job for part of the day just to make it go, just to make it move. So they're being themselves in that moment, even though the job may be their dream job or whatever. But and then other times they're not. That's a great place to just notice. You know what I mean? I remember all the times I did not want to go to school. I didn't know how true that was. Even I second guessed myself and thought I was just thinking, I was trying to avoid it to get away with something. Even I thought it wasn't as profoundly true as I now look back and know that it was. Maybe I was supposed to be, I have a feeling I was supposed to be part homeschooled, part schooled.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I'm going to do with my son. Like, he's going to be homeschooled / forest school.
I
So
love it.
yeah, it's I don't want you to just give away your autonomy to a
That's
teacher.
right. You're in Canada, so I can imagine what the school. I mean, down here in the States, even the public schools have turned into. I
I mean,
We got to homeschool our
yeah,
kids. We've
it's
offloaded that.
it's
Can't.
a whole tangent. But before we go into more tangents, yeah, another thing to think about is, yeah, like, when Danny was small, his dream was to be maybe homeschooled, and thinking that's not realistic, that all kids go to regular school, or you have to be practical. I have to work this job because that's what everybody does.
I wanted to be a movie star, by the way.
Oh, there you go. It's like, no,
I
that's not
remember that.
realistic. That's not what
Yep.
people do. And yeah, that's conditioning too.
Yep. And I remember, yeah, so various things along. As I got older, every cockamamie thing I thought of that I wanted to do, I was told over and over again that might not be realistic or da da da. Da. Every once in a while, I would hear advice. It doesn't mean generators are incapable of accepting advice. The thing is, if you have the energy to listen to the advice, that's where you're supposed to be. So your
Mm-hmm.
uncle comes along, and is like, "Hey, kid, can I give you? Let me give you my take on this." And you look at him like, "Sure, Uncle Bobby, go. Yeah. What do you got?" But inside, I reserve the right to say to whatever you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe Uncle Bob says something that's like, I'm going to have to ponder that, and then
Mm-hmm.
fine. And then
Right.
someone asks you questions later, or the situation comes up later. Now you're thinking about it differently, but sacral will still give you that truth in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we have some tips for you for the previous slides conditioning. So when you start noticing that you're going into overthinking mode, right? Just do like a quick little visualization where you see a white light in the center of your mind and going down to your gut. And it's a small little exercise to bring you into the present. Because usually whenever you're overthinking, you have gone into either future mode or past mode, and neither of those are the present mode, which is what you need to be in to get to your sacral.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
This is good. I love this one, by the way.
Welcome. There's so much more. And then, yeah, there may be times where you're second guessing yourself, right? And when that happens, it can also be that you have decision making fatigue. There's just too many options, right? And it's just easier to simplify, right? Instead of again, let's go with food. Instead of telling my son, do you want shawarma, or do you want meatballs, do you want tacos, or do you want pizza, or do you want things, and he's going to be like, what? Just give 2 options at a time,
Right.
right?
Right.
So don't try to do it all at the same time. You could do 2 at a time. It's like, okay, pizza or sushi, neither of those, then I could give you the next 2 options, and that's
Right.
a much easier way to, what's the word I'm looking for, to get away from that
To,
overwhelm.
yeah, and to integrate how you're operating and to integrate how their kid is operating in this case. exactly. Our before decision making conversations. I like this. I like this line. Grounding yourself by checking in with your five senses. This is, you know what? I should learn a few cool physical tricks for people. I have a couple, but these are a couple cool ones to add.
Yeah, and the five senses is super easy, right? You could do it anywhere, right? It's like, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear? What do I feel on my body? Did I get all the
This
senses?
round
What am I tasting? That's the one I always forget. I'm like, what am I tasting? Oh, do I have a piece of gum in my mouth? Does it, still taste like dinner? Like, whatever. Like,
it is grounding. That's very grounding. You're right.
yeah.
All these things bring you into now.
Hmm.
This, they all bring you into now.
Right. And then this is, I guess, more of a tip for someone who is dealing with the sacral authority. Don't ask them if you're sure, because then they go from their sacral into their mind, and then
Yep.
they start second guessing. Wait, what do you? And no, we want to build
I have
up
to,
confidence.
yeah, and when I do analysis and I'm reading for people, and it usually, I usually end up having to do it twice. Reading for folks two times over the course of a couple days. I'd noticed that I do ask the generators if you're sure, but I only do it when I'm very tuned into that wasn't a sacral response. It's the only time I ask, "Are you sure? Are
Mhm.
you sure about the last answer?" And then when I hear another short delay, skip of a record, and then they
Mhm.
start trying to say something, that's why I tune them right in. I'm like, notice how you're struggling. Notice how it doesn't feel great. Notice how your energy's, and they see it, and that's where
Mhm.
the beauty starts to happen. Yep.
So here's some good habits for someone with the sacral authority, right? So Danny was like, yeah, grounding. So anything grounding, again, that brings you back to the present, right? It could be yoga, it could be, breathing, it could be, the five senses thing, it could be
Yoga,
meditating.
intentional breathing, absolutely. That's a good one actually, because it brings you right into the now. Listen to your breath when you do that. If you can put your hand on your heart and almost listen to it beat, that's an
Mhm.
incredible sensation of right now. That is as now as you get. Yeah,
Yeah, there's like my family's Buddhist, right? So there's one where you do mindful basically everything, right? So usually most of the time when we're doing any sort of activity, driving, eating, whatever, we're kind of in a trance, in an autopilot, right? So this way what you're doing is you're being very very intentional with feeling out all your sensations. So when you're chewing, for example, you're really feeling each bite. You're really, exploring the taste. It gets you completely out of your mind. And again, you don't have to do it with just eating. You could do it with doing the dishes. It's like, okay, each what does the water sound like? What does the scrubbing feel like on my hands? So it's just, I mean, this is good practice for anyone, but
it
just
is.
something to keep in mind.
We can, yeah, we'll just replace certain words, but these same things are for all the types, all the people at any given time. This is good stuff.
Mhm.
Um, embrace your mantra. Oh, it's
So
a
express your primal reactions to food. See, we keep coming back to food. This is a way, if you've been disconnected from your sacral, which can be very true for you for an adult listening to this, and you're just very new to human design. Uh, to get back into it is let yourself make those sounds. Right. So when my
right.
kiddo's eating, I always let him make whatever guttural sounds are coming out of him to express the thing when he's eating. Like, oh yeah, that's yummy. Like that's you, I guess, what's the word,
It's
opening that up
aligning. It's
again.
aligning. It's aligning him to himself deeply, and then it brings him into the now.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you're making a sound, you're in the now. If you're making a sound, you're focused on the sound you're making. You're now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
So
a good.
for all sacral authorities out there, embrace the saying, it's a hell yes or a hell no for me.
It's a hell yes or a hell no. If it's not any of them two things, then I don't know.
Oh, if I should write that down. I should just make
Right?
T-shirts, sacral authority sayings. That I don't know, and yeah, it could change.
Yeah,
And
big headers. Sacral says, and then that would be a great T-shirt.
yeah, yeah, okay, noted. I'll make sure to cap this somewhere so I can reference it. And also repeat to yourself, I trust myself. and do that 3 times a day. And that's building self trust within you. If you've been, again, disconnected and not trusting how you've been getting your sounds, and then maybe you've been listening to your sacral but then not actually acting upon what your sacral wanted to do,
Can I
right?
go back to
So
that I trust myself thing?
sure.
Um, it's important because this one here is a particularly really cool thing because it's an isolated statement out of the blue. You might not believe it. And that's why I'm bringing this.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't actually believe that and you know you're not certain if you believe it and you feel weird saying it because you're not sure if it's true and all those things, if any of this stuff is happening, understand that's not you. That's not you because the real you, the 5-year-old you, trusts yourself. Period. The 4-year-old trusted itself. So just fake it till you make it. Say it out loud, even though it hurts a little and it doesn't quite feel right to your psyche yet. That's even more reason to physically plant yourself and say the dang thing. Say it. Say
Mm-hmm.
it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And yeah, sacrals love doing, right? So do things that stimulate whatever it is. It could be painting for you, it could be Lego, it could be make cooking a really complex meal. Whatever it is for you, it stimulates the satisfaction in your sacral
It
when
could be
you
waiting till the last minute to get the trash out. If that's your thing, do it. Just be doing it.
right. Okay,
LOL.
so we're gonna take a quick intermission for questions. Anyone in the audience? Any questions about what we just
Sacral
covered?
has this beautiful thing. If you're a generator, you're walking around a sacral generator, manifesting or otherwise, you are walking around with this beautiful sense of answering the question, who am I? That's built into your genome. Who am I? And
Mm-hmm.
it's to let the sacral know you're deeply self-concerned as you're supposed to be, so that all the definition can leave your aura and go out and empower the other as yourself. That's the self-concern is not selfish. It's to be yourself so well that you can pour yourself out into the world and empower the rest of the world as yourself, not as a fraud, not as something else, not as fooling yourself or any of that. And so, who am I? Put this question front and center. Add that to the rest of the questions that were on here. Who
Mm-hmm.
am I? And understand that you're looking for that skip of a record later to say, have I started thinking? So,
Mm,
if I'm explaining to a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, I can only use terms like, oh no, it's either right now or it's a skip of a record later. Let's say they know what a record is. You know what I mean? And that's all I can tell them. I can't go into any detailed descriptions, too many words. It's just you're just looking for that, you know, bump later. You're driving down the road, there's a little bump, but how many seconds was that? That was 1/10 of 1 second, but you heard it, you felt it. You need to get that little bump in the road, that skip of a record later to stand out.
mhm.
Once you see it, it stands out, and then you start realizing I have truths before that, I have lies after that.
Oh, that's a good one. So now we're going to get into the more complicated section, and you will see why. So I am an emotional authority, so I can keynote, and Danny has read for and had many emotional authority people in his life. So he can give that perspective of the person witnessing what happens. So our truth comes from the solar plexus center, like we showed you in the beginning of our stream. So leading questions for us could be, does this make me happy? Or do I want to experience whatever the thing you're trying to do? And our decision making time frame is at least 24 hours, up to a week, depending on how big this decision is. So if you can see, it is very different from
It
what
is very
we just covered.
Yeah, and so now what we pointed out at the beginning of the show, this is the solar plexus, the newest awareness. God gave us a good lead time. Basically, it was sometime before the birth of Jesus, after the death of Buddha. This thing came into the body. It started to become genetically available. It didn't come online until 1781. So for 5,000 years or more, somewhere or several thousand years, excuse me, not five. What am I saying? For about 3,000 years or less, it's been there. We've had a long time for this thing to just sort of start gestating and turn into this nine-centered being. So it is new, and it is not fast. and it mirrors what the founding fathers did for us when they set up a court. And they put that third rail in place when they made the three branch. They always had the first two branches. There was always a king ruler and a legislature, parliament of some sort. When they put the judiciary in there to slow everything down, it's as if they added a solar plex right at the time the revolution was taking place, which is right at the time of the change. It's
Oh,
not an accident.
that's an interesting
That's not an
note.
accident. It's not an accident. If I say, "Hey, we're going to go to, I'll take this to the Supreme Court," everyone says to themselves, "Great, I'll see you in a couple years." It slows everything down. It truly does.
Mm,
And that's, but it comes to clarity and it puts a sort of absolutism in the air when it does. It's it,
right, which
it's
we'll
really
get into several slides later. There's a lot of slides for this section. So, the interesting part about the emotional authority is you have emotions in an internal closed circuit that are happening regardless of what's happening in your life. So you're feeling sad, you're feeling angry, you're feeling hope, you're feeling hopeless. All of that is happening all the time in your body in a closed loop. That's what that means. Even if you could be having the happiest day of your life, suddenly you might just get a pang of sadness. Where did that come from? You'll see. But it's not from something outside.
and well, even if it ends up being something as it relates to what's outside, the point Moana's making is don't go asking your question, what is it?
Yes.
Really allow, and don't let anyone ask you what's the matter and feel like you have to have an answer to that. Every once in a
Mm-hmm.
while, there will be an answer. My dog died.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
the reason for like to suddenly start having feelings. But your feelings aren't limited to dog died. They're
yeah.
vast, emotional, it's everything, and you might not even feel anything for days, or maybe it'll hit you right away. So
Mm-hmm.
it's there's a lot. It's
There's a
juicy.
lot. You'll see. You'll see. So, emotional intelligence is something that innately comes with people with emotional authority. And it doesn't come from, okay, so this is an interesting thing. So, there can be two different types of emotional intelligence. There's the emotional intelligence that people feel when they're undefined because they're taking in what the emotional authority is putting out and they actually feel it themselves. But the way emotional authorities gain their emotional intelligence is through relation. So when they see someone going through a thing, it's like, oh, I've gone through that thing. I can relate. And that's how they're able to spot things. So he's like, oh, yeah, been there, done that. So they're feeling their emotions so deeply all the time, they can see it in someone else. They might not be feeling what that other person is feeling, like an undefined emotional will, but they can see it very clearly because they were there themselves. It's an
I'm glad you pointed
experiential
that
thing.
out. Like the undefined emotional person, has the potential to. You're absolutely right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because the undefined emotional also is incredibly empathetic, but quickly, and not necessarily through the duration. Only the emotional
Mm,
person has the kind of empathy that would be possibly willing to sit through it all more easily, more readily.
right. So the solar plexus center is pulsing out energy constantly, consistently, right? It's just doing its thing, right? And part of that is having emotional highs and having lows, and this is represented in a wave. So we're going to get more into this in detail, but this is just to give you an overview. And like I mentioned, it's a closed system, but that doesn't mean that you're not influenced by others. It's just another layer. So you're going through your own stuff that has nothing to do with anything. And then there's stuff that happens to you that just adds to it. So
Right, that
lots
has
of
everything to
feelings.
do with other things. Right, exactly.
Lots of feelings. And I think I already did I have the same thing twice?
That's a good delineation you got going right there, Moana. It is beautiful because that closed circuit, the way you're describing it, is actually very deep. It's very good. It really is.
I just realized I
Because
have the
you're
same
right, the
thing like
emotional
twice.
what's happening underneath the chemistry of it is bringing the being to some form of new clarity over time.
Mm-hmm,
That's so personal. That's such a closed loop. That's like, dude, we're on our own clock. I realize I'm getting input from the outside as I go through this wave, which is what I'm supposed to do.
mm-hmm,
I'm supposed to have all that. because I need my clarity as it relates to how I'm going to navigate out here in the world. But internally, it has nothing to do with the outside world yet. It's just a divine chemistry bringing you through this process of clarity making, by which your outside world will interface with just fine once you get there and along the way, as long
Perfect.
as people are aware. Yeah.
I was getting bugged by the fact
But
that I
I do,
had the
Moana,
same.
because
The,
I'm just, you're the one living with it. I'm not emotionally
no,
developed.
I saw that I had two bullets repeating. I should have done a QA check. I got rid of it. I fixed it for anyone who noticed.
How embarrassing.
Yeah. Anywho, so now we move on to the next slide. So, understanding the emotional wave. Okay, so you experience the wave, um, not only as a reaction to life events, which is what I mentioned, right? The closed system. This wave is going up and down, up and down, up and down, regardless of the things. And what was it? And thank you for noticing these pictures. I chose them myself to try and make them
I love the pictures
correlate,
you have. These things are amazing.
right? And you will constantly and randomly go through highs and lows. So constant and random highs and lows. And here's the thing: when you first come to know this information, you're like, "This sounds awful. What? I don't want this." But when you're super, super high and when you're super, super low, that's when your best ideas show up. That's when your creative bursts show up, right? Think of the best songs, the best movies. It was either written in a high or a low.
That's a fact. That's a fact. And even if they're playing along and they're not moving in their wave and they're writing their song, as soon as it starts to touch them, they're going to move in that wave higher or lower to add that extra clarity to the music that they're composing all day long. Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. All
And
right.
so we're emotional beings. Humanity is an emotional body.
Mm-hmm.
We've always
So,
wondered what name to give that and all that stuff. You're looking at it. Humanity is an emotional body. It's
so,
beautiful.
um, it. So here's the thing: emotions themselves can be criticized, right? Like it's like, oh, don't have an emotional outburst in public. That's so embarrassing, right? So we want to bring some understanding and compassion to it, right? So like you mentioned, the juicy part, each emotion that you experience is adding on a depth of understanding to whatever the thing you're trying to understand is. And over time, you doing that, well, you're not even having to do anything, you're just being. This depth will end up cultivating compassion for others, resilient in yourself, because, boy, have you gone through the ringer
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
even without things happening to you, and wisdom. So there is a good part that comes from this, is these things. Dan, you have anything to add before we go to the next thing?
No, I like this cult, this resilience, this wisdom. You get smarter as you see your wave. You recognize that thing has been building and giving me intelligence this whole time. And when you see it, it becomes profound in that moment. Every time I explain, do you remember when I explained it to you, Moana? I was like, dude, you ever notice it never sticks around? It can't
The
stay.
feeling? Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, no, that's not completely true. And I have some slides to show you what that
Okay, cool.
means. So this is Danny Psychic. This is what you just rolled us into our next slide.
Okay.
So the not sticking around part doesn't happen when you hold on to the emotion.
Right. Right.
So this is another case of so in the sacral thing where I said you're holding on you're going into fear and anxiety over past and present, I mean past and future, right? In this case, this is very much going into the past. You keep replaying that thing and that feeling over and over and over again. As
Yeah.
someone who, again, wishes I had human design much earlier than I figured it out, I'm like, I wish I knew this. And I was doom spiraling. This is what I like to call it.
Yeah. Doom spiraling. I love that.
This is doom spiraling. You're like, oh, you know, how dare they say that thing? That means this. And then you start pulling for events that support up that thing that made you feel that thing. And you just keep piling it on and piling it on. And what happens is you are now not operating your wave the way it's meant to, which is what Danny said. Correctly, it will just pass. The feeling will pass and go to a new feeling. But when you're doing this doom spiraling, packing on the reasons for why you're feeling that and how dare they and all the ways, da 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 da, it will linger. It could linger. I've had it linger for as long as years.
Right, of course. And one of the big lingerers I've always found is this self-dislike or the blame of another. It's
Oh,
your
yeah.
fault.
It's
That
one or the
blame
other.
thing will hold that other person, to hold that other energy into your emotional process for years, potentially.
Oh, yeah, I've had it for sure. And it just like for years you hold on to that grudge. Oh, yeah. I don't know if grudge holding is an emotional authority.
Well, it can be anything, but if you have an emotional authority and you're grudge holding, it's an emotional process.
It's not fun.
Unresolved.
I will
Yep.
tell you that. It's not fun lingering in those feelings that should have passed long time ago.
Right.
But
True.
how do we deal with that? So, more conditioning, right? So, this is the conditioning around emotions specifically, right? So, people usually label your emotions as a good emotion or a bad emotion. You're angry, that's bad. Oh, you're sad, that's bad. Instead,
Right.
let's reframe the language. Let's say I'm on a high right now. I'm just feeling a little low right now. It
Right.
takes away the sting of it's like something's wrong with me if I'm
Right.
feeling the bad emotions.
Right. Right. No, I totally get that. And one of the things that goes along with this, is it bad? Is it good? Just this whole, the emotions are being labeled in this way that's hard to deal with. Happy and sad, up or down. Up or down has been always sort of one of my favorites. Or it's on the move. I was like point out, no, my emotions are moving. Or
Mm-hmm.
pick the word melancholy instead of like depressed or something like that.
Yeah,
Just
that's exactly
recognize
what
that
it
the
meant.
movement makes you intelligent. Down lower in your wave when you're not feeling good and you think it's not good, you're getting more intelligent. Wicked fruitful, fertile things are happening down there.
Right. So, like, you know, Danny mentioned the low emotions are depression, anxiety, weariness, right? And having those emotions, they're still stigmatized. It's like, oh, they're depressed. You want to
Yeah.
stay away from depression, or like, oh, they're anxious. They're so anxious, or they
Yeah.
have anxiety, right? And they turn it into
A
um,
problem.
what's the word? They're turning it into a personal God, my brain is farting. This is open head stuff right here. They're
Just something.
labeling.
Yeah.
That's the word. They are
Labeling.
self-identifying and self-labeling with the feelings that are supposed to be transient. So instead of saying I am feeling depressed, you're saying I am depressed. I am feeling anxious. I have anxiety. And it becomes a much more prolonged thing, and you don't accept all parts of your emotional wave, right?
Right.
And same thing with the highs, right? You know, people are happy when you're happy, or you know, people think you're palatable when you're neutral, right? When
The
in
door to
reality,
the outside is left open. I gotta close it. I'll be right back.
yeah. So, you know, the truth of the matter is all of these are part of your experience as having an emotional authority. So when you don't accept all parts of you, these fluctuations are either more frequent or they're more severe in how you feel them. They're like, whoa, when they're not supposed to feel that severe. So types of emotional waves. So there's more than one type. So the feelings that you will cycle through again, no matter what's happening, is you'll feel hope, you'll feel pain, you'll feel joy, you'll feel despair. But there's different waves in how they look. So in order to know what kind of waves you have, this is a handy time for you to pull up your body graph. So I'm giving you a moment now to pull up your body graph if you have it. And then this section is just going to make that much more sense for you. And now we're going to roll into the first types of thingies. Why are we? There we go. It disappeared. Okay, great. So the first wave looks like this. This is a source wave. And you are looking for the channel 59-6 in your body graph. So if you're looking at your body graph, see if you have the number 59 colored in, and if you have a line connecting it to number 6. If you have those two numbers connected, that is called a channel. And specifically, that channel is a source wave channel. So if you have that, how does that feel, right? So for the most part, if you're looking at this line, it looks mostly straight. However, when you're around others, this is when it feels more intense, right? So like I mentioned, it's mostly stable, but it needs to have somebody around you to bring you to awareness. Now,
Unless they're missing somebody.
you are not here. So
Unless,
whatever you were saying, you have to say it again.
oh, unless they're missing somebody.
Oh, if they're longing for somebody, you mean?
Longing, then they will be alone with their emotional wave, and it will take place. What you're
Regardless.
also pointing out is 59-6 is about intimacy. It's the generated capacity to have a sustained energy that points at the openness to some form of intimacy and union and communion and literally getting together.
Oh,
So
then it makes perfect sense that it needs somebody around to have that show
that
up.
totally always needs, yeah, that's where it's going to move the most is in and around others, absolutely. And then later when they go home, if they're all by themselves, it'll still be moving from whatever they
Yeah.
were going through with all of that. Yeah.
So again, looking at like the visuals, right? You it's pretty gradual and consistent fluctuation between the peak and the valley. Like it's not like crazy severe swings. And you get very intense emotions when you're around other people.
And then it is crazy intense swings on a level plane. Just sort of like, oh, it goes down. It's like,
Ah,
wow, this is strong. It's because it is strong. It's sacral generated, and it is an emotional wave, and it is biting and cutting if it goes too unhealthy. Yep.
So
And
when you have this wave, it is super important for you to spend some time alone to go back to neutral before you make a decision. And the type of energy you have, it draws closeness to others and intimacy, like Danny mentioned.
well, it does because gate 59 in that channel breaks down the aura to the other. It's called the aura breaker. It
Oh,
literally, it literally actually breaks down the aura in the other.
now we
Rather
get
than,
to a much more fun looking way.
oh yeah,
When you compare what we just looked at to this. Ooh, Nelly. Okay, so we have the tribal wave. So, friends, again, if you have your body graph handy, you are looking for either channel 1949 or channel 3740. If you have either of these or both of these, you have the tribal wave. So, when you look at this wave, right, it intensifies, right? So it has a little mini wave that's just going up, up, up,
we
up,
call
up,
it
and
a
then
ratchet wave,
start.
and it's like a step forward, a step back, a step
Yeah.
forward, a step back, and it's constantly moving along its emotional wave to
Mm-hmm.
where it's either a step forward and it feels okay, or it keeps taking too many steps back and suddenly it'll crash down. And so
Mm-hmm.
this particular wave has the ability to be very powerful suddenly in the now.
Oh yeah, so you can see the crash like here, right?
Yep,
It's either it resets to the bottom or it crashes. So you'll
yep,
experience one of the twos.
yep,
And the pressure is released with some emotional outbursts.
yep.
That's normal. Again, we're trying to take out the stigma away from feeling the feelings. So if you have a tribal wave and you have random emotional outbursts, that's you
Someone's breaking the
resetting.
deal. You can't
Some
make a deal. There isn't some trust somewhere. Someone isn't holding up their end of a bargain. There isn't a sense of the right needs being met. There isn't a sense of the right sensitivity to your needs. There isn't the feeling of support for what it is you're doing and or the support you gave them in the first place. All these things are showing up. Notice I labeled a bunch of things that are about tribal.
Yep.
tribal goings on. So being up close and personal, almost always having to do with the other,
Hmm.
always having to do with the other,
So
because
this also operates on a physical touch basis. So for example, I know my kiddo has this wave. So when I can see it now. I can witness him going up, 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 up. And when I see it, I'm like, ooh, if I touch him, he could just whoosh, just outburst. So
yep,
I ask, I'm like, do you want a hug right now? If he says
right,
yes, then I'll only give it to him then. If he doesn't want one and I hug him against, his wishes, it will burst.
right.
It bursts and it's like, oh no.
What
Oh
does
no.
that teach us? This touch, which is one of the keynotes of this stream of awareness, which from 19 all the way up to 40 is a stream of awareness, one of our amazing streams of awareness. It's a stream of awareness that will survive the shift in 2027, or at least partly it will. And so it's a big deal, and touch matters. It
Mhm.
matters, and it's
So
needed. Don't
so
not touch your tribal child. Make
mhm,
sure they are touched.
mhm. And Danny already, went ahead and covered these bullet points.
Oh,
But not like he said, right? This wave is very closely connected to how your needs are met in relationships that matter to you and that are close to you,
period.
right?
Tribal.
Right, and physical affection is very important. So to someone who has this channel, cuddling, hugging, petting animals, like it's part of your design. You need this. So yes, my kiddo loves cuddles. I love cuddles. I have a tribal wave channel as well. And the way to you know better navigate this wave is you always communicate what your needs are, because people are not mind readers. That's something I had to learn. I was like, people should just know. That's just a good manners. No, people know nothing.
Right.
People know nothing. You
Right.
have to tell them out loud what you need. And when you expect a bunch of things in your mind, and when the things don't happen, you get that crash. It's called an emotional, what is it? No, not emotional. It was expectation hangover. Because you have
Yep.
all these invisible, unspoken expectations. Don't
Yep.
have that when you have a tribal wave. Just say it out loud what you need. It will save your wave feeling really awful. It will save the people around you from feeling like I don't know what happened.
Because it's so powerful, all the emotional waves are worth following the manifestor strategy of informing the other. And where the manifestor informs as it relates to resistance and their movement and their way, they could also be informing as it relates to keeping this emotional process in a way that is healthy still, instead
Mm-hmm,
of letting it go out of balance. But this one here, informing, hey, my needs aren't being met, dude. We got this issue.
mm-hmm. So
Start
one
looking.
of the last things that you could do is like engage in sensory things, right? Like it brings you back to your senses. So, it's kind of like the last thing we talked about. And something with your hands is ideal. So if you're into knitting, do that. I like to groom my bunny when I'm like feeling icky. Like something about touching his soft wool and like brushing him out. It just like takes me out of all of the things that are happening inside of me, and
There's something
just brings
particular about this. This channel has one of the three main gates in it that interfaces our existence with the rest of the animal kingdom. That's gate number 49. It's
Mhm.
in this stream of awareness. Everything about the stream of awareness has to do with tending the flock and touching the animals, and ultimately sacrificing the animals too.
Mhm.
The butcher is in here. Someone's got to be the butcher. No one likes to think about it, but someone's a butcher, right?
Yeah,
The meat
Danny's
doesn't, the
into
meat, yeah, the meat
nuances of
doesn't come out of
gate.
the womb looking like that. Oh, look at the cow just gave birth to like 10 slabs of prepackaged ham. No, no.
For anyone who has no idea what Danny just talked about, he is going over gates, which is a very advanced topic that we will cover in some
Oh,
way
yeah.
future
Oops,
time.
oopsie. Thank you, Moana.
It's
Danny,
good. Just
that's the
reminding
earth,
you,
honey.
everyone here is still very, very new to this.
Yeah.
All right. So our next wave is the individual wave. So I was listening to a lecture right before I came on about this, well, about all the waves, but this one was very interesting in particular because the way it's felt, it kind of feels very stable until it's not. Right?
Right.
That's what these straight parts are. You're like feeling full, feeling good, what? Or feeling good, feeling good. Oh my god, I feel awful. So it's just
Spikes.
severe swings, the spikes. It's severe. It's kind of, it almost feels like it's coming out of nowhere.
Right.
So it's usually labeled as a moodiness. It's like
Very
I
much
can't
a
I
moodiness.
can't
Yep.
read you. One moment you seemed fine, and then the next moment, you're wanting to bite my head off. What happened?
It's
And
so
people,
individual and so unique. It's look what it's really looking for. It's looking for that its wants are met. It's all about wanting. Wanting is the primary keynote on this whole stream. And this want, as soon as it's not met, then all I can't talk about the gates because I'm Moana said, but all the keynotes of the gates do come in as it relates to my spirit doesn't feel high. My spirit feels low. I don't have what I need. I don't, and it's not even about need. I just the right connections with others I don't feel a little closeness, the romance, I don't feel like hearing it, I don't want to say anything here, it's just this isn't good, and
so
down you go.
the interesting thing about people with this individual wave channels is before they found human design, a lot of them might have been clinically depressed. And once they figured out they have this wave, like for example, our guest Tressa, hopefully she comes next week. She has been off her medication because now she understands that's her body's mechanic. So when she goes into that crazy crash, it's like, oh, I'm in my melancholy.
Right.
It's just my body's way of just being. And there's nothing inherently wrong with me.
Melancholy is these are the chemistries in our body bring us to incredible intelligence. The discomfort of the emotional wave and or the extreme comfort with the emotional wave, that's one way we get to our clarity. It makes us intelligent. Fear is another one, right?
Mm-hmm,
Fear makes us intelligent. It's fear
mm-hmm,
drives intelligence. There's just no question. Generalized melancholy, moodiness, and sadness is the third one. It's a
mm-hmm,
huge, huge driver of our intelligence. Basically,
mm-hmm,
it keeps telling us that the most profound chemistries in our body that gives us sadness are also the ones driving most of the intelligence.
mm-hmm. So one thing to note is I know I said that your wave is operating in a closed system, but with the individual wave, unlike the previous wave where we talked about tribal, right? It's very much a people thing. So is the source one. It's a people thing. The individual thing, individual wave is very not related to external circumstances whatsoever. Not like the other two that
Not like
still
the
has
other
a
two.
tinge of it.
Oh, it's still related to certain circumstances. I get what you're saying, but it is,
Mm,
if anyone was the most closed loop, it would be this one.
yes.
Right. It's happening inside because it's unique,
Mm-hmm,
individual stuff. The reason it's a spike wave is because all the awareness inside of an individual definition or gate is in what's called a pulse, a creative pulse. It's and creative is chosen on purpose, creation, just like God said, let there be light, creation, right?
mm-hmm,
That creativity of that pulse isn't there until it is. That means this thing spikes or it doesn't.
mm,
It's just like that moment you have the greatest idea, and suddenly it's this thing that it's so unique, and you got it. That's the first
mm-hmm.
time in the universe that ever happened. It happened in you. It's unique. It fits the definition of literal creation. It's in a
Mm-hmm.
pulse, so it just happens by virtue of this pulse that is outside of our timing. We can't choose the timing.
Yeah.
It's independent of our will to control it. It's
Mm-hmm.
all these beautiful things that we
Mm-hmm.
know in our esoteric knowledge. But yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And like when you're in your high, right, you feel the need to go socialize and hang out with people that you enjoy.
Yep.
During your low, that's your body's way of going. You need some alone time. You need some time to just process that. Maybe express yourself through creative whatever it is, right? Whether it's like drawing, painting, sculpting, writing a song, whatever your thing is. For creative outlet, right? And that's why they're there. Like you said, all the creativity is born out of these fluctuations in your wave, right? And they pass quickly. Like if you see like the little triangles, they're not like huge, right? They come and they go as long as you don't judge them, you don't label them, you don't start questioning them, they'll go.
Otherwise, the spike goes down, it looks like a big block, and it'll stay there deeply. And these people
Mm-hmm.
can have these eating disorders, suicidal thoughts, all kinds of things can happen down there because it's so alone. It's so
Mm-hmm.
alone. You're only you. It's so unique. This one just smacks of feelings of isolation. If it goes
Mm-hmm.
too long, you don't realize what it's doing.
Mm-hmm. So just follow the good practice of, oh, I'm in a high, let's spend some time with people. Oh, I'm in alone, I need some alone time, and that's one easy way to help you navigate that channel. Then we come to the abstract wave. Now, if you have this, you have either channel 3635 or channel 4130. So this one operates on desire and feeling, and it has peaks and it has valleys. Out of all the waves, this is the most dramatic one, and it has very very big highs and very very low lows. And the most
Going through this, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah,
Finish.
and this one, it's kind of related to the tribal one because it has a lot to do with expectations. Maybe I was keynoting this one. Because when your expectations are broken,
Yep.
that's when this one feels real nasty. But
Yep.
yes, you what did you want to tell me before I was going to go on to the
Well,
other ones?
because it's always going through the process of being hungry for the experience, which is the desire it has, and clinging to that feeling of wanting and all that feeling of crisis, because you don't know what it's about until you finally reach the end and gotten what you hoped you would expected, or gotten your expectations dashed. If you got what you expected or whatever, if it felt good, you feel full now. You filled up. The gas tank is full, but it's full for the next few hours until you drive it down, need to fill back up again, get hungry again.
Mm.
So it's about like a
You,
Sunday.
you want to feel, yeah. So this one, I guess it makes a lot of sense where it's like you have a very you can envision the things you want, and the things you want in your life, the things you want in your experience. And I believe I have the abstract wave channels as
You
well.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm like, yes, in my head, if you ask me what I want and what I see for myself, that would be ideal world. It's very easy. Yeah, I want to go do that thing and see that thing and be with that person
Very
thing. And
experiential. It's the experiential wave. It says I desire this, or I desire that. It's a stream of desire for an awareness, and it just wants to try the next thing.
oh, Danny, I just had a big revelation. Oh my god. Okay, so
Go ahead.
sidebar, tangent story time. Okay, so when I
That
was when I was young, right? In my mind, all I ever wanted to do was be a marine biologist and work on a boat and do research things with sharks specifically. And what happened was I found out when I was, in high school that in order to do any sort of marine biology, of course, you need to be a bachelor of science and you need to be proficient in physics, calculus, chemistry, so all the higher up sciences. And I found out I was god awful at all of them. I barely passed them. And it's not like I was, a lack of effort. I had tutors. I harassed the teachers before and after school. I did homework questions that wasn't assigned. I did everything in my power to try and master these subjects, and it just was not happening. And the last straw for me was, I think, when I failed calculus. I was gutted, Danny. Gutted. Like, it felt like my entire life was pointless. I'm like, what is the point of me having this desire to like be a marine biologist and work on this boat if I don't have the talent to execute it? Like, it was, and I don't, and now I'm understanding. I'm like, there was this abstract wave. I had this whole picture painted of what my life was supposed to go like. And when the thing happened where my expectation of being able to do that didn't happen, it was horrendously painful. Like, really, really bad.
expectations become the killer of this wave, and it infects the rest of humanity because humanity has been conditioned by this wave so deeply that I don't know anyone that isn't loaded with expectations.
So we
I
have
mean,
actually a question here. So what if you only have half of it defined? And
then
if
it's
you
how
are
it's hanging.
around someone with the other half, so she's talking about hanging gates.
Yeah, electromagnetic. Then suddenly you guys are going to experience that experiential wave together, and where that comes into where you guys meet in the middle, essentially, because you have one gate and they have the other. You'll both experience certain expectations, but one will have it stronger, the one with the gate of expectations, and the other one will have more the feeling of the crisis, gate 36. But you'll both be experiencing this incredible high of wanting to go experience that thing. And
Mm,
then but it won't, but if you're not emotionally defined, it also won't carry the same emotional wave as someone with an emotional definition. You'll just carry it in the now. And then and when it comes crashing down, the crash isn't quite the same, because if you're not emotionally defined, you'll
mhm.
both experience that as, well, that's over. I hope we're not bored with each other
Yeah,
now.
it's not the same heart crushing feeling I felt. And again,
Nope.
I'm like, if I was explained this to when I was a kid, I don't think I would have been suicidal as a teenager.
Period.
I would have not felt like my world was coming to an end because I wasn't able to fulfill the thing that I, dreamt up
Thought
in
you
my
needed to
head.
do. Right. Right.
Right? I would have been so much more kinder to myself.
Yep.
I would have been so much more compassionate. And oh man, this is life changing stuff. So everybody needs to start looking at
Their
the
emotional wave
things.
and their emotional connections.
Yeah.
One other thing for that question, by the way, if you have an electromagnetic in this stream of awareness, um, you should really ask some more questions, because you guys are experiencing lots of cool things with it, and some of them aren't so easy, and some of them are a little bit crazy. Like you might both, or one of you might think it's too crazy, and one of them might love it so much they're trying, trying to be it again. And so you'll have to come into the middle and talk about it in such a way that says, hey, I'm aware we're being pulled away by chemistry. It's gorgeous, but it's still not quite ours. We have to be careful. Let's just be careful.
Yeah, yeah.
I might not like, listen, one, it usually has something to do with physical experiences. So one partner might say to the other, it's like, listen, I don't know, I'm not full of that as the way you are the same right now, but I understand we both get swept away at that thing or whatever. So it's about just communicating. If you're generators, obviously you're just going to communicate and say what you feel, or it doesn't matter what type you are, say what you feel.
Yeah, say what you feel.
Inform. This emotional solar plex requires informing.
Mhm. So here's some of the 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 pillars for decision making when you have an emotional authority, right? So these are me trying to make it into the common denominators. Okay, so when you're feeling happiness or when you're feeling expansive, right? It's a sign that this thing is right for you, right? But in you know contrast, if you're feeling weighed down, if you're like kind of collapsing, if it's
Okay.
bringing a heaviness, unhappiness, discomfort, it's probably not aligned. If you're just kind of feeling meh, or you're like, I'm not sure, that for you translates to a no for now, right? Because going along with just okay, mediocre choices ends up later on down the road like draining your energy, and it's
Right.
absolutely not worth it. And
No.
now there's a difference. This is very similar to when we were doing over sacral. There is a difference between a no and fear, right?
Yeah.
Fear feels like a buzzing, while a no just feels just empty, like it's empty, it's neutral, and there's no exhaustion attached to it. So to tell those apart. Dan, you have anything to add?
Yeah. The whole idea of witnessing this, feel happy up, weighed out down, feeling neutral, you're in the middle. The whole idea of watching this emotional process is to watch that it's always moving, and that its purpose is to bring you to a certain clarity. It's about the stages in your life and the stages in a day. The clarity is you're strong about, that's the way it is. That's the clarity. We haven't had that in our lives very easily, many, many times. That's why I use the Supreme Court analysis, because they're the ones that bring the clarity ultimately, in that system anyway. So
Right. So unlike sacrals who only had 6 steps, emotional authorities have 7 steps. decision making. So, step one, give yourself at least 24 hours, up to a week if it's a bigger decision, to clarify, you know, your decision as it's presented. Okay.
Absolutely. And that whole giving yourself time comes with this beautiful phrase, I'm not sure, I need to sleep on it. I don't make quick decisions.
Yep.
That's informing. That's, by the way, that's informing. Doesn't matter what
Right.
your type is, you're
Just like
informing me.
I just need more time. Give me more
I just
time.
need more time. And the big thing about this is the deepness of the clarity. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Like we all know, some things don't become clear until you've moved out of puberty into your 20s, or out of your 20s into your 30s. So don't latch yourself too much onto the time frame. Most things will fall into this time frame totally, but don't
Yeah.
latch on to one. Just recognize the sensation.
Yeah.
The dust is settled and you're just pretty clear. Anyone can bring
Right.
it up and you're not going to go spiraling out of control. You've reached clarity.
Mm. Wait, are you jumping a bunch of steps? Yes, potentially. Step two. You have to check in on your wave, right? Where are you? Are you on the high side? Are you on the low side? Or in the neutral side?
Yeah.
If you are feeling a super high or super low, keep waiting. Step three, you keep checking in until you hit that not super happy, not super sad part, right? So the previous slide was you going through the wave at least once. You know, when you feel immediately happy when you did the thing, ideally you wait for another ping of happiness to come in. And if that still feels right for you, that's what you want to do instead of just like
That
the
brings you
first
to
get.
clarity, right? This
Right.
word neutrality, I would swap out for the word clarity. It seems like,
Sure.
at least in this
No, this
context.
is I'm talking about this in the terms of feeling.
Okay.
So neutrality is how you're feeling. You're not feeling super, super high. You're not feeling super, super low. You're just buzzing along in the middle, right?
Yep.
So when you finally feel that neutral space, you, you know, picture in your mind's eye doing that thing that you're trying to decide on. Like visualize it. Connect with your body. Feel the emotions that come up. If the emotions that are coming up is happy when you're seeing this play out in your head, that's most likely a yes. If you are not feeling that, then you could say, you know what, that's a no for now. If it feels if you're feeling fear, again, give yourself more time, ride out the emotions until you feel neutral again, and then start over. But again, if you've ridden your whole wave and you can see yourself, if that thing is going to make you happy when you do it, that is a sign that this is a right decision for you.
That's the thing. You nailed it. And it's literally what happens at that time is this clarity I keep talking about. You're looking for this, it's a fairly deep sense of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So there's the wave riding thing too. So I'll give an example. So I was working a job that the entire time, when you're emotional authority, your emotions are your compass. It felt icky. And the longer I did it, the more ick it felt, until the point where the ache was so bad, I just couldn't take it anymore. And that was my body going like, this is not right for you. Like, no, you're not even feeling a tinge of happiness
right.
doing this thing. If you've been feeling yucky about this for so long, like, it's time to cut loose. Like, to some people, it might have been like, oh, like, you took that decision so quickly, you just like quit. And I'm like, no, I've been feeling icky about this for weeks.
Right.
And I was just ignoring it.
It's can't ignore it. That's the point.
Yep. And then, you have pressure to respond quickly, right? It's like, oh, you're taking too long. What do you mean you need a week? So this is like a very, very classic case of conditioning for emotional authority.
Totally takes you right away from your nature because now you're thinking
You're just
instead
like,
of,
I need to come up with an answer right now, and then you just make something up from your mind.
yeah.
Versus, letting your emotional authority actually give you the
And by the
clarity.
way, when you have an emotional authority, you're wicked prone to do that because if you're up on your wave and someone presents you with something, you don't want to say no. Let's keep going. Let's do, so yeah, it drives a certain amount of spontaneity plenty of
Right.
times.
And I kind of touched on this one already, where, when you're feeling a thing, we don't allow yourself to show it. It's like societal expectation that you are pleasant all the time. Even when you're low, you have to put on a brave face
Right.
and fake smile through the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's conditioning. And struggling with being decisive, right? It's like, what do you mean you can't choose right now? You should be able to choose right now. You should be able to just know. But your wave is a process. It's like, I need to feel what it's like if I do this thing in a happy point, in a low point, in a somewhere in the middle point. And you just have to be patient with yourself. And people might think you're dramatic because you are feeling all these emotions. You can be hard to read. So people can be like, "Oh, she's being so moody," or "Oh, she's being a type of way," just like, right? And it's just, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, it's just your design. So,
Struggling with decisiveness or indecisiveness, being labeled dramatic, and this fear of bipolar disorder,
or depression.
depression. Yep. These are things that get labeled onto the person. They
Because you
get
start thinking, is there something wrong with me? Why am I so sad? Is there something wrong with me? People keep saying, what's wrong? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's just my wave. Just let it pass.
Nothing's wrong. By way of standards, we had previously said it does appear as if everything is wrong, but by the new standards, nothing's wrong. I'm going through a process.
This is just, and the other thing is, I guess this is a very much a North American conditioning. Our saying of "how are you" is not helping this, right? Because when we say "how are you," we don't truly care how you are. We just want to hear the standardized canned responses of "I'm fine," and you,
Right.
even if that's not true,
Right.
that's what you say. And it's a giant societal conditioning that nobody cares about what you're feeling.
It comes in the smallest thing, little things. That very question, like I pointed out when we were young and us generators, our parents stopped asking us and started, expressing and telling us things they couldn't have known. Same thing with the emotional being. When they're very young, if the parents don't know and the adults don't know, they can't explain it to the child. This is where you get your intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
in child appropriate ways at the right time, so
Mm-hmm.
they can integrate that. So yeah, happens
Right.
in the simplest of ways.
Right. And then the next thing is like you kind of get into this debilitating self-doubt because of your previous emotions, right? You stop trusting yourself. You're like, I don't want to feel that way again, so I can't do anything. I don't want to feel that way, so I'm just going to avoid doing that thing. And
Yeah.
there's like a wicked sense of like not trusting. It's like a sad place to be. It's I've felt it. I'm sure other emotional authorities have felt it too.
All
It's
day long. Yeah. It's this whole self-doubt thing with no one there to work with or to let you know, or for no awareness that it's a chemistry it's an actual logical chemistry. An emotionally logical chemistry. I didn't know those words went together. Apparently they do. And that's what that is.
so it's not all doom and gloom, right? So the tips to dealing with all that is again the white light dropping into your body and going over your emotions, and it'll stop you from over analyzing, why am I feeling this thing, or is this decision XYZ. And let your emotional wave guide you to getting to neutral, right? And then it will always also give you the right timing to do stuff. That I don't think that's talked about enough, right? It's like, I need to jump on that. The thing's not going to come by again if I don't do it right now. That's not true.
The timing
Something.
is independent of any mental process you may have. It's independent of will. It's independent of your awareness. The timing arrives. It's up to you to recognize who you are, how your definition works, and know that will inform you exactly what's going to happen during your experiencing the timing of things. So, what's that telling us? All the types, including the manifestors, technically have to reorient themselves to recognizing I got to wait for the right timing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get to
So
make wait.
again, let me sleep on it, right?
Yep.
So when you say things like that, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you indecisive. It shows
Makes
that
you
you're
intelligent.
confident.
It makes you emotionally intelligent, is what it does.
Yeah, it just like, I mean, it conveys to others that you are confident in yourself, that you can ask. It's, you have to ask. People are not going to just give you more time. You need to ask for more time when you're doing the things. And
Or
avoid.
inform. You're informing them of the more time. If you're a generator, that informing comes as a response. Yo, I need more time. If you're a
Yeah.
manifesting, you're just informing. It's natural for you. If you're a
Hmm.
projector, you're recognizing, I better tell them.
Hmm.
If you
Right.
happen to be emotionally defined for a moment and you're a reflector, it's still, you're recognizing, I better say something. Not that it's the
Hmm.
same for them, but right.
Yeah. You want to avoid arguments during like a deep, deep low, right? You might say something you regret. So, uh,
Unless you inform them. I might say things I regret.
exactly.
And I
But
reserve the right
but
to let
here's
you
the
know I
thing.
regret it later.
So there are times where um you informing is not enough. Like a person might keep pressing you.
Right.
Yeah, and that's that. And when that happens, they're not respecting your autonomy of like you wanting to, not go there.
They're not
But
quite right for you, but if you're in your experiment, witness how that pressing you makes you feel uncomfortable. You don't have the answer. You don't know. The timing hasn't arrived yet. Doesn't matter if you're a multiply defined ego manifester with everything under the sun designed to make an impact and do. You can't do that.
mhm,
You're subject and like a generator waiting for the timing.
mhm.
Um, and so that's,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Witness them
just
try to pull you out of that and witness it's like, I really don't like this. It's true, I don't like it. I
mhm,
don't want to call them bad, but they're a dick right now, and they need to stop and they can't. So they're like a dog with a bone. That's not me.
right. But yeah, just I know I'm guilty of the last point, right? When I'm in a low, I've said things I wasn't proud of. So
Ah,
again,
that's
just tell the person that what, I'm feeling really, really crappy right now, and I don't want to talk about it. Give me, the next morning. And you know what, like with my husband and I, before he knew he that I was emotionally defined, he would keep pushing. He's like, no, 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 we need to resolve this right now. Right now we need to talk it out. And I'm like, I'm not ready. I am not ready to talk it out right now. Like, give
right. And
me.
now he knows, doesn't he? He's like,
Yeah.
oh, and he's almost relieved. It's like, okay. Is he actually okay with the not now?
No, he still feels a type of way.
He's
Ideally, because he wants to get rid of that pressure from his
right.
undefined. To him, it
Oh, yeah.
doesn't feel good to have it in there because
Right,
my
right.
waves are still going
That's right.
regardless.
You have a defined route, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that puts him under that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So keep informing him of that. Hey, do you notice the tight feeling in you? That's not yours. That's not
Hmm.
your.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
like
You're,
it?
you're
You
you're
can just
picking
tell
it
him.
up from me.
It's like David. Do you like that feeling? Does it feel good? You feel
No,
like
he's told me. It's like his
yeah, he
whole
doesn't like
body.
it. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
like whistling Dixie, honey? No, and he doesn't. So yeah,
So you're,
inform him of these
yeah,
things.
so some good habits, right, for emotional authority is actually try tracking your wave. I mean, I should be doing this myself. But I at least label them now. Like when I wake up and I'm in a mood, I'm like, oh, I'm here.
Yeah. Right.
I'm in the low. I
Hey,
know
at
it.
least now here is a place rather than a nebulous thing of dread and woe and
Hmm.
worry and concern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can track it throughout the day, right? It's like, okay, I feel like this right now, I feel like this in the afternoon, in the evening, and then you can notice how it's fluctuating. And one of the things to do is reflect on lessons you learned during those intense emotions, because again,
Please, for the
you're
love
supposed to,
of God.
because that's the whole point. That's
That's
the
the whole
whole
point.
point of you having those emotions. It's
Please,
supposed to help you gain clarity.
Father who art in heaven, please.
Just like, if you're not reflecting, you're just on autopilot, feeling those things, and not
Right, right.
leading to the clarity, which is kind of painful for everybody, including yourself. So don't do that.
Repeat that to yourself. My emotions don't define me.
Right,
They just
you are
don't.
not your emotions. So when people are like, I have anxiety, I am depressed, I want to like just shake them like, no, no, you're not. This is you're holding on to the things that is not for you to hold on to.
And that emotional wave will make almost anybody wonder if they have a problem. It's so
Mhm.
simple. It currently still, as we wake up to it more, it won't. But you can start to see why this knowledge is for children. I mean, if some of the oligarchs came down from wherever and gave me $5 billion, I would marshal this stuff forward into the world for the children. So incredibly, we'd become a machine. You know, it's this is for children.
Mhm.
They want to
So,
get, go
to
ahead.
celebrate your highs, dance, hang out with your friends, play some music.
Absolutely.
And when you're lows, also listen to sad songs. Write a sad poem. Have a good cry. Watch a
Sit
sad
with it.
movie and cry.
Yep.
You just allow yourself to feel the things. Don't suppress
Yeah.
it,
Yep.
especially the lows. And again, release those emotions. One way to do it is grounding, like literally grounding, like put bare feet on soil,
Right.
and it will also bring you out of that frenzy, which is not the most pleasant feeling. Oh, and there we go. We have done it.
Yeah,
We
this is
have
really good. What this shows us is these two primary authorities, they work really well together, by the way, and they also work perfectly independent from one another, depending on what your inner authority is. It's just real important to get yourself read and to get this analysis underway so that we can get you to your you. Moana, if I'm not mistaken, you now, after all this time later, since we very first read what's going on a year ago, is that right?
Oh, geez. I should look at my
Yeah,
emails and figure
it's
that
like
out. I don't know.
it's finally been it's a hunk of time. Finally, it's not 2 weeks ago anymore. Right. It's not a month ago anymore. It's been a hunk of time. So you have now noticed. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have noticed this thing because I remember in the beginning, it's like, well, I don't like it. You were informing me, and I was like, oh shit, she's about to manifest for me. You know what I mean? And you were probably on the verge of manifesting me a little bit. You know, I mean, I don't like this way. Don't tell me I have to. I don't know if I want to do this. And
Mm.
remember that in the beginning. And
Mhm.
what
Yeah,
happened?
I thought it was nonsense. Nonsense in the way of like, why do I have this? This is stupid. I
Right,
don't want to deal with this.
right, right. But somehow or other, it's not so bad, and you're starting to recognize that, right? What have you seen? This is you, hun. This emotional wave thing. You got it twice.
Yeah. Again, wish I had this as a child. I would have navigated myself in a completely different way. Completely
Yep.
different.
You
Again, I would be coming from a place of compassion and kindness instead of being so self-critical and
right,
constantly questioning what's wrong with me.
right, right. My God, this is what an amazing thing. So this now that you've actually started to see this much, this is worth how much is that worth to you?
I don't think
I-
you
I'm
could put a
trying to make a point. Just I know you can't
yeah
actually do anything on it, but for the sake of let's say you're a well-off person, how much is that actually worth to you? A lot, isn't it? I mean,
yeah of
this is
course.
years of therapy successful, which therapy is almost never really successful. It only ever gets you to a spot, and then you're just as likely to fall back or not. That's
Yeah,
not
you just become so much more aware of yourself. Like before you're kind of guessing. You're like,
all that
I maybe
anxiety.
it's this, maybe it's that, and even therapy or modern medicine.
Mm,
That's all it is an educated guess.
right.
But this is a roadmap. This is just straight up a roadmap.
Straight up a roadmap, right down the channels of the chemistry, right down the life forces. They're clear 2-lane highways there or whatever.
You have your roadmap.
You have
Now
your
that you
roadmap.
have it, you just have to be gentle with yourself, right? And for both types of authorities, right? There's a conditioning in both, and you're conditioning each other. And now you know where that is, right?
Right,
We gave you the map. It's like here's where you're doing it. Here's where you're seeing it. And now you can be kinder to yourself and to your loved ones and to that boss that randomly gets angry like whatever.
right, right, right. Exactly. Emotional clarity. The world is dealing with it now. Think about it. You put everyone together, there's 8 billion of us at any given time, of every given room, in every given situation, every given gathering. What is the design of that room, of this planet, of your home, of everything?
Mm-hmm.
It's an emotional manifesting generator.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that as a reality. The reality of this planet is
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, emotionally freaking violent at times, right? Emotionally swinging. We've been asked to make emotional decisions over the whole pandemic. Make emotional decisions. We have to hurry, and everyone's throwing it in. Generated, frustrated, emotional, aggravated anger and frustration is this planet. So often, war, all these things. That's the lack of awareness of this emotional wave does primary. You know what Ra would always say? Think, if your solar plexus is defined, it's the most important center in your body graph, and it's the home of your authority, your inner authority. If it's open and it's not defined, it's the most important center in your body graph. It's a source of great conditioning and right. He also said a similar thing pretty close as it relates to the ego too, but it's true because we're 50-50. The forces, the whatever's out there, that sort of help create us and all of this, assuming we're not alone, and I assume I was, the forces want us to deal with this emotional 50-50 in our planet. They really want us to make peace with it. The open emotion people to make peace with not amplifying it so much. The emotional people to make peace with the fact that, hey, you know, we stopped checking in when we didn't feel like dealing with your emotional wave at that time. So we don't. It's not that we don't love you. It's just that we're not what you think you want from me right now.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like so much headache could have been avoided. I mean, I
My
think I
man
told
is supposed to be like this. I was emotional. No, your man's not capable. He's not
right,
capable.
like
He's there for
I
you.
think I
He's
told you
there.
about like a couple weeks ago, right? I can like again, hindsight 2020 was like, oh, the reason I felt so betrayed and let down is because both of my waves went crashing down. Like the
Yeah,
tribe let me down, and then my expectations were not met either.
right,
So it's like both waves smush.
right,
So I'm like, now that explains why I felt like I did.
right.
And now there's a greater understanding of it. I'm like, okay, so next time I will make people more aware of the
Right.
things I expect from them. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job.
Well, just you'll make them more aware, and the people who can't hear that you'll notice now more quickly. You'll be so sensitive to that. You'll be
Mhm.
emotionally aware and sensitive, and it's like, hey, they're not hearing me. I better not set myself up for too much of this. I can see it. And I also don't want to make them feel bad. Well, whatever. And I'll try it again. I'll say some things, but or you're
Yeah,
on. It's like I can see I'm walking into this dark place. They're not. They don't hear me. They're not actually seeing
yeah,
it. So when I'm disappointed about 18 minutes from now, I'll know why, instead of,
yeah. Instead of like prolonging it, I like
oh,
prolonged it for 6 months
right,
because I'm like, it'll get better. It'll get better. It was not getting better. It was
not getting better.
progressively getting worse.
Right, right,
And I didn't listen. I should have pulled the plug a long time ago. But
right.
hey, it's an experiment,
It's an
right?
experiment,
It's an
right.
experiment.
It's an
You
experiment, right,
you
exactly. And it helps us not be so mad at the other guy, at the other
yeah,
person.
I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not. I don't think I'm mad anymore. But at the same
Right.
time, it's like I know their level of awareness is not as high as I thought. That's something that was brought to light. I'm like, okay, that's good to know.
It's a thing that ultimately over time, we all get aware of. And it's this thing I keep pointing, we need to smooth this thing out
Mhm.
because we unemotional people like myself, undefined, I spent a lifetime trying to avoid that until I was blowing up at it. Unless I was riding the high part of it, and then we were having sex. You know what I mean? But mostly it was I spent a whole lifetime recognizing I was always hopping from island to island of avoiding it.
Mm-hmm.
I just
So,
avoided it.
just to let everyone know, next week we are going to. I'm just going to make sure I know what I'm talking
Hey,
about.
we gotta cut this. I gotta get off. We're at 2 hours.
Yeah, we are going to go over the splenic authority and the
We'll
what
go
is
over
it?
identity and ego. We'll get through the rest of them is what we'll
Yeah,
get
yeah.
through.
It's splenic and ego. Sure. Let's say that for now. For now, that's what we're going to do. Thank you so much for everyone joining us tonight. We love sharing with you. So please keep coming back. Give us
You killed
a
it. You did
follow.
it.
And we will see you for next week's episode. Take care, everyone. Bye
Till the next
bye.
time. Bye.
Cheers.